James was a white man in his early 40s with soft brown hair and kind eyes. He had always wanted to be a father, but life had other plans. After losing his wife unexpectedly, James found himself alone with a big empty house and a heart full of love waiting to be shared. One day, after much thought and courage, he decided to adopt a baby boy. The adoption agency introduced him to Marcus, a tiny baby with dark brown hair and big, curious eyes. Marcus was black, and James knew their family would look different from most. But James only saw the little boy as his son, someone who needed love, care, and a safe home. From the very first day, James wrapped Marcus in his arms, feeling a deep connection. He dressed the boy in a soft blue shirt and whispered promises of protection and love. James wore simple clothes, often a plain skin shirt, but to Marcus, he was the strongest and kindest man in the world. They lived in a quiet neighborhood where people noticed their unusual family. Some were kind and welcomed them warmly, while others stared or whispered. But James didn't mind. He believed family was about love, not skin color. As Marcus grew, James made sure to teach him everything he could, from tying shoelaces to riding a bike. He took Marcus to parks, museums, and even baseball games, always holding his son's hand tightly. James wanted Marcus to know he was safe and loved, no matter what. But Marcus's journey wasn't always easy. In school, he sometimes felt different. Some kids didn't understand why his skin was darker than his dad's. They would ask questions or make comments that made Marcus uncomfortable. James tried to prepare him for these moments, telling him he was special and proud to be who he was. Marcus's dark brown hair would sometimes catch the sunlight as he played outside, and James would smile, thinking how lucky he was to be his father. Yet there was a quiet sadness inside Marcus that James couldn't always reach. It was as if Marcus carried a feeling that went deeper than the usual troubles of childhood. James noticed this sometimes. After a long day at work, he would sit beside Marcus on the couch. Marcus wore his favorite blue shirt, and James his simple skin shirt. James would ask gently, "How was your day, son?" But Marcus often gave short answers or looked away. James didn't blame him. He knew Marcus was growing up in a world that wasn't always kind. James wanted to be the father Marcus needed, but sometimes he felt unsure how to help with the invisible struggles his son faced. One afternoon, while they were walking home from school, Marcus saw some boys teasing another child. Marcus frowned and told James about the incident. James felt proud that Marcus cared deeply about others, but also worried about the challenges his son faced. Despite the hard moments, James never stopped showing love. He cooked dinner while Marcus set the table. They laughed over silly jokes, and James read bedtime stories in his calm voice. James always reminded Marcus, "You're my son, and I love you more than anything." Their small home was filled with love and hope. James kept pictures of their happiest moments on the wall, Marcus's first steps, birthday parties, and quiet afternoons together. Even when the world outside was confusing, inside, they had a bond that no one could break. Though James and Marcus looked different, their hearts were the same. James's skin shirt and brown hair might not match Marcus's dark brown hair and blue shirt, but they were connected by something stronger than color: love. This is the beginning of their story, a story about family, challenges, and the deep bond between a white father and his black son. It's a story of a man who raised his son with love, even when the world didn't always understand. And if you want to hear more about how their journey unfolds, don't forget to subscribe and follow along. There's much more to learn about the struggles and the love that binds them together. Marcus was now 5 years old, full of energy and curiosity. He loved to run around in his blue shirt and play with his toys, always asking questions about the world. James, his white father with brown hair, did his best to keep up. Every day was busy, but filled with small moments of happiness. James worked from home most days, so he could spend plenty of time with Marcus. He cooked meals, helped with homework, and read stories before bed. James wore simple skin shirts while playing on the floor with Marcus, making sure his son felt safe and loved. But as Marcus grew, James noticed that sometimes his son looked sad or confused. At school, Marcus started to understand that people saw him differently because of his skin color. Some kids stared, whispered, or even said things that hurt. Marcus did not always tell James what happened, but James could see it in his son's eyes. One afternoon after a day at school, Marcus came home quietly. James asked, "How was your day, Marcus?" But Marcus only shrugged and said, "Fine." James wanted to help, but didn't know how. He wanted to protect his son from hurt, but he understood that there were things Marcus faced that were hard to explain. James tried to teach Marcus about pride and strength. He told him stories about brave people and how important it was to believe in yourself no matter what others say. He reminded Marcus that he was special, loved, and had a bright future ahead. At times, James took Marcus to visit his own family. James's parents were gentle and kind, but they didn't always understand Marcus's experiences. Sometimes their questions made Marcus uncomfortable. James wished he could explain everything to them, but the words were hard to find. Marcus started to ask questions about why he looked different from James. One evening, while they sat together after dinner, Marcus asked, "Dad, why am I brown and you are white?" James smiled gently and said, "Because families come in all colors, son. Love is what makes us family." Despite James's love, Marcus sometimes felt a distance he couldn't close. He wanted to share his feelings but worried that James wouldn't understand the challenges he faced because of his skin. Sometimes when James offered advice, Marcus felt it came from a place of not fully knowing what it was like. One day, Marcus told James about a boy at school who called him names. James listened carefully, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. He wished he could fix everything with a simple word or hug. James promised Marcus that he would always stand by him and fight for him if needed. Their neighborhood was mostly peaceful, but James knew that racism still existed in many places. He wanted to prepare Marcus for the world outside their home, but also keep their home a safe space. James never stopped reminding Marcus how proud he was of his son. Over time, Marcus began to trust James more. He shared small stories about school and friends, and James always listened without judgment. James learned that sometimes the best way to support was just to be there. Patient, loving, and ready to understand. One weekend, James and Marcus went to a community event celebrating different cultures. Marcus saw children who looked like him, wearing colorful clothes and dancing to music that made him smile. James watched his son's face light up and felt hopeful that Marcus would find his place in the world. Even though James could not live Marcus's experience, he wanted to learn and grow with his son. He asked questions, read books, and talked to other parents. James realized that being a good father meant more than love. It meant understanding and standing beside Marcus in every way. Their story was not perfect. There were moments of struggle and confusion, but James and Marcus were learning to build a bridge between their different worlds. James's skin shirts and brown hair were different from Marcus's dark brown hair and blue shirt, but their hearts were connected. This is how their family kept growing stronger, not by ignoring differences, but by facing them with love, patience, and courage. Remember to subscribe if you want to follow the next part of their journey and see how a father and son learn to understand each other better every day. Marcus was now a young boy starting school, full of energy and questions. His dark brown hair was always messy from running around, and he loved wearing his favorite blue shirt. James, his white father with brown hair, always tried to keep up with Marcus's fast pace. James worked hard to provide for his son and spent every free moment with him. At school, Marcus began to notice things that confused him. Some kids looked at him differently. Sometimes they said things that hurt without even realizing it. Marcus didn't always want to tell James about these moments. He knew his dad loved him, but sometimes it felt like James didn't fully understand what Marcus was going through. James noticed his son was quieter after school some days. He wanted to help but didn't know how. He remembered his own childhood was very different and worried that he couldn't protect Marcus from the challenges of being a black boy in a mostly white neighborhood. One evening after dinner, Marcus sat close to James on the couch. James was wearing his usual skin shirt, and Marcus his blue shirt. Marcus looked down and said softly, "Dad, do you really understand me?" James's heart tightened. He wanted to say yes, but he wasn't sure. He realized that no matter how much he loved Marcus, some parts of Marcus's life were hard for him to see. From that day, James began trying harder to learn about Marcus's world. He talked to teachers, read books, and listened to stories about what it was like to grow up black in America. He wanted to be the father Marcus needed, not just the father James thought he should be. Marcus noticed his dad's effort and felt a little more comfortable opening up. One afternoon, while playing outside, Marcus told James about a time a classmate made fun of his hair. James listened carefully and said, "I'm sorry you had to hear that, son. Your hair is beautiful, and so are you." Marcus smiled, feeling stronger with his dad's support. Despite this, there were times when Marcus still felt like James couldn't understand everything. He wanted to share more but worried it would hurt James or make him feel sad. Sometimes Marcus wished his dad could see the world through his eyes, to know what it felt like to be judged just because of skin color. At home, James tried to make their life full of love and learning. He cooked Marcus's favorite meals and watched cartoons with him on weekends. James often wore his comfortable skin shirts, and Marcus always had his blue shirt on. They laughed, played, and shared quiet moments, building memories that would last a lifetime. James also introduced Marcus to people who looked like him. He wanted Marcus to see that his skin color was a source of pride, not shame. Sometimes James took Marcus to community events where they met families from different backgrounds. Marcus loved these times and began to feel more connected to his own culture. One day, James sat down with Marcus and said, "I want you to know that no matter what, I will always be here for you. If you ever feel like I don't understand, please tell me. I want to learn from you." Marcus looked up, surprised by how much his dad cared and wanted to grow with him. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real and growing. James's love for Marcus was clear, and Marcus was learning that his father's support was something he could count on, even if they didn't always see eye to eye. As they walked home one afternoon, James held Marcus's hand tightly. Marcus looked up at him and smiled. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot. Both father and son knew they were on a journey together, one of love, learning, and understanding. This part of their story shows how a father's love can start to bridge the gaps between different worlds, building a strong bond that grows with time. If you want to see what happens next in James and Marcus's journey, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next part. There's still much to discover about family, trust, and growth. Marcus was now entering his teenage years. His dark brown hair had grown thicker, and he often wore his favorite blue shirt. James, his white father with brown hair, watched Marcus grow with pride, but also with worry. Teenage years brought new challenges, and James wanted to be there for his son in every way. Marcus had started to notice the world differently. School wasn't just about learning math or reading anymore. It was about fitting in, feeling accepted, and sometimes facing hard truths. Some kids treated Marcus differently because of his skin color. He heard words that hurt and saw looks that made him feel alone. James knew these moments were becoming harder for Marcus, but he wasn't sure how to help. One evening after dinner, Marcus and James sat together in the living room. James wore his usual skin shirt, and Marcus had on his blue shirt. The room was quiet, and Marcus finally spoke up. "Dad," he said softly, "sometimes I feel like you don't understand me." James's heart ached hearing this. He reached out and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Tell me what you mean," he said gently. Marcus looked down, struggling to find the right words. "It's like, you love me, and I love you too. But you don't live the same life I do. You don't know what it feels like to be judged because of my skin. Sometimes it's hard to explain, and I don't want to make you sad." James listened carefully, realizing that love alone was not enough. He needed to truly understand Marcus's experience. From that night on, James made a promise to himself to do better. He started asking Marcus more questions about his day, his feelings, and the things that made him happy or sad. James also read books and watched videos about the history and struggles of Black people. He wanted to see the world through Marcus's eyes. Marcus noticed these changes. At school, he still faced challenges, but he felt more supported at home. One afternoon, he told James about a time a teacher didn't believe he could do well in a subject because of his background. James was shocked, but proud of Marcus for standing up for himself. "You're stronger than anyone knows," James said. Despite their efforts, there were still times when Marcus felt distant. Sometimes when James gave advice, Marcus felt it didn't fit his reality. James understood this and learned to listen more than he spoke. He realized that being a good father was about patience and empathy. On weekends, James and Marcus spent more time together exploring Marcus's culture. James listened to the music Marcus loved, tried foods that were new to him, and attended community events. These moments helped them build a bridge between their different worlds. One day, James surprised Marcus with a trip to visit relatives who shared Marcus's heritage. Marcus was nervous but excited. Meeting people who looked like him made him feel proud and connected. James watched with happiness as his son smiled freely, feeling more himself. Their home was still filled with love, but now it also held more understanding. James wore his skin shirt, and Marcus wore his blue shirt, symbols of their unique family. Their differences didn't divide them. Instead, they brought opportunities to learn and grow. As the seasons changed, Marcus and James continued to face life's ups and downs together. They learned that sometimes love meant admitting when you didn't have all the answers and being willing to grow alongside each other. One night, Marcus said quietly, "Dad, thank you for trying to understand me. It means a lot." James smiled and replied, "I'll never stop trying, son. We're in this together." This part of their story shows the importance of honest conversations and the effort needed to truly connect. It's a reminder that love is not just feeling, it's action, learning, and growing every day. If you want to see how James and Marcus's story continues, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for the next chapter. Their journey is far from over, and there's much more to learn about family and understanding. James had started to change the way he thought about being a father. After his honest talk with Marcus, he realized love was only the beginning. Understanding his son's life meant learning new things, listening more, and stepping out of his comfort zone. James spent hours reading books and watching videos about the history and culture that shaped Marcus's world. He wanted to see things not only from his own perspective, but from Marcus's. Sometimes it was hard for James to admit that he didn't know everything. But he knew that trying was the most important step. Marcus noticed the change in his father. One afternoon, while they were playing in the yard, Marcus said, "Dad, thanks for trying to understand me better." James smiled and said, "I'm learning every day, son, and I want to keep learning." James also reached out to Marcus's teachers and friends' parents. He wanted to make sure that Marcus was safe and supported at school. He asked questions and listened carefully to their answers. James realized that understanding Marcus's world was not just about history or culture, but about the everyday moments his son faced. One weekend, James took Marcus to a community festival celebrating diversity. Marcus wore his favorite blue shirt, and James wore a new skin shirt that was softer and more comfortable. At the festival, Marcus saw children and families who looked like him. He saw music, food, and traditions that made him smile. James watched as Marcus's face lit up with joy and pride. After the festival, James and Marcus sat together on a bench. Marcus said, "Dad, this is where I feel like I belong." James nodded and said, "I'm glad you shared this with me. I want to be part of it with you." James kept learning about Marcus's culture. He listened to the music Marcus liked, even if it was different from what James usually enjoyed. James tried new foods and asked questions about their meanings. Marcus felt proud that his dad wanted to know more about where he came from. At home, James and Marcus spent more time talking. Sometimes they shared stories about their days. Other times they just sat quietly, enjoying each other's company. James was careful not to interrupt or judge. He learned that sometimes listening was the best way to show love. One afternoon, Marcus came home upset after a tough day at school. Some kids had made fun of his hair again. James put his arm around Marcus and said, "Your hair is beautiful. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Marcus smiled weakly, feeling comforted by his father's words. James realized that no matter how much he learned, the world outside was still not always kind. He wanted to protect Marcus, but also prepare him to be strong. James talked to Marcus about standing up for himself and being proud of who he was. Marcus was growing into a confident young man, but he still needed his father's support. James knew that understanding would take time, patience, and love. They were on a journey together, learning to bridge the gap between their different experiences. Their home was filled with love and new traditions. James wore his skin shirts, and Marcus wore his blue shirts. The colors didn't matter as much as the bond they shared. They celebrated their differences and used them to grow closer. James and Marcus had faced many challenges, but they kept moving forward. James's efforts to understand his son made Marcus feel valued and seen, and James felt grateful for the chance to be the father Marcus deserved. This part of their story shows how learning and listening can strengthen family bonds. It's a reminder that love grows when we open our hearts and minds to each other. If you want to continue following James and Marcus's journey, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next part. There's more to come about their growth, struggles, and the power of family. James and Marcus were spending more time together than ever before. Marcus loved his blue shirt, and James often wore his comfortable skin shirts around the house. Their home was filled with laughter, talks, and quiet moments of connection. James was learning more about Marcus's world, and Marcus felt his father was trying in a way he hadn't before. One weekend, James suggested they try something new, exploring Marcus's culture through music, food, and stories. Marcus was excited but a little unsure. He wasn't used to James asking questions about things that mattered deeply to him. They started with music. Marcus played some songs he loved, songs that spoke about his history and experiences. James listened carefully, sometimes tapping his fingers to the beat, other times closing his eyes to understand the feelings behind the words. Marcus saw his father's effort and smiled quietly. Next, James cooked a meal inspired by Marcus's family traditions. He carefully followed a recipe Marcus's grandmother had shared. Marcus helped chop vegetables and set the table. As they ate, James asked about the meaning of the dishes and the stories behind them. Marcus felt proud to share parts of his culture with his dad. Later that day, they watched a documentary about the history of black families in America. James sat close to Marcus and held his hand. They both felt the weight of the stories but also the strength of the people who lived them. These moments helped Marcus see that James cared deeply. Even if James had not lived Marcus's experiences, he was willing to learn and grow. Marcus began to open up more, sharing thoughts and feelings he had kept inside. One afternoon, James and Marcus went to a local community center where families from different backgrounds gathered. Marcus played with children who looked like him, and James talked with parents who understood some of the struggles James was learning about. Marcus's face shone with happiness, and James felt grateful to see his son so comfortable. Still, there were times when Marcus felt frustrated. Sometimes when James tried to help, Marcus felt misunderstood. One day, after a difficult conversation at school, Marcus told James, "It's hard when people don't see me for who I am." James nodded and said, "I'm here for you always." James knew that understanding Marcus completely would take time. He accepted that he might never fully live Marcus's experience, but he promised to keep trying. That promise meant everything to Marcus. At home, James and Marcus created new traditions. They celebrated birthdays with food and music from both their cultures. They shared stories of family and history. James learned to listen without interrupting, and Marcus learned to trust that his father was on his side. James's skin shirts and Marcus's blue shirts became symbols of their different worlds coming together. Their family was not like others, but it was theirs, built on love, effort, and respect. One evening, as they sat together watching a movie, Marcus said quietly, "Dad, thank you for being here." James smiled and replied, "I wouldn't be anywhere else." This part of their story shows how small moments of connection can build strong bridges. It reminds us that love grows deeper when we take time to understand each other's worlds. If you want to keep following James and Marcus's journey, don't forget to subscribe and stay with us for the next chapter. Their story is full of growth, challenges, and hope. Marcus was growing into a strong young man. His dark brown hair was always messy from his busy days, and he still loved wearing his blue shirts. James, his white father with brown hair, watched him with pride. Their bond was stronger now, but life still brought new challenges. One afternoon, Marcus faced a difficult moment. At school, some students started rumors and made hurtful comments about him. The word spread quickly, and Marcus felt the weight of their judgment. He didn't want to tell James at first because he feared worrying his dad or making things worse. But James noticed the change in Marcus's mood. After dinner, James sat beside him in the living room. Wearing his skin shirt, James gently asked, "Son, is something bothering you?" Marcus hesitated but then opened up. He shared the story of the rumors and how it made him feel alone. James listened carefully. He knew these moments were painful, but he wanted Marcus to know he was not alone. James said, "We will face this together. I'm here to protect you and support you no matter what." Marcus felt a wave of relief. His dad's words gave him strength. The next day, James spoke with Marcus's school counselors and teachers. He made sure they understood the situation and were ready to help. James wanted to make sure Marcus's school was a safe place where he could learn and grow without fear. Marcus began to see James not just as a father, but as a protector and an ally. James stood by Marcus at school events, cheering the loudest during games and helping with homework. James learned how to navigate difficult conversations about race and identity so he could better support his son. One evening, James surprised Marcus with tickets to a concert featuring artists who spoke about culture, identity, and strength. Marcus was excited and grateful. At the concert, surrounded by music and people who understood their experiences, Marcus felt proud and connected. After the concert, James and Marcus talked about the power of community and standing strong together. James admitted he did not have all the answers but promised to keep learning and growing with Marcus. Marcus realized his father's love was deeper than ever. Their home became a place of safety and understanding. James wore his skin shirts and Marcus his blue shirts, symbols of their different but united worlds. They celebrated victories together, no matter how small, and supported each other through struggles. Marcus's confidence grew, and he began to speak up more about his experiences. James was proud to listen and learn. He understood that while he could never fully live Marcus's reality, his role was to stand beside him, offering love and support. One afternoon, as they walked home from school, Marcus said softly, "Dad, thank you for never giving up on me." James smiled and replied, "You are my son, and I will always be here for you." This part of their story shows how love and support help overcome challenges. It's a reminder that family means standing together, even when the world is hard. If you want to follow James and Marcus's journey as they face more struggles and grow closer, make sure to subscribe and watch the next part. Their story is still unfolding, full of hope and strength. Marcus was now a young man ready to face the world with confidence. His dark brown hair was slightly longer now, and he often wore his favorite blue shirts with pride. James, his white father with brown hair, watched him grow with deep love and respect. Their journey together had been filled with challenges, but also with hope and understanding. Over the years, James and Marcus had learned to accept their differences and celebrate what made them unique. James wore his skin shirts like a symbol of their bond, and Marcus's blue shirts reminded them both of the growth they shared. They knew their family was not like most, but it was strong because of love and effort. One day, Marcus faced a difficult situation with some friends. Misunderstandings and disagreements tested his patience and strength. He felt unsure and hurt, unsure how to handle the tension. But James was there, standing beside him with quiet support. James reminded Marcus that no matter the challenges, he was never alone. He said, "Son, sometimes life will be hard, but you have the strength to face it. I will always be here to support you." Marcus felt comforted knowing his father believed in him. As they talked, Marcus realized how much James had changed over the years. James had grown from someone who loved from a distance to someone who understood deeply. The father and son had built a bridge between their worlds, not perfect, but strong enough to hold them together. They spent more time together, sharing stories and dreams. James asked Marcus about his hopes for the future, and Marcus listened as James shared his own dreams for them both. Their conversations were filled with honesty and respect. Marcus knew that his father might never fully live his experience, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the love and commitment James showed every day. James's willingness to learn and grow made their bond unbreakable. One afternoon, they sat together in their living room. James wore his skin shirt, and Marcus wore his blue shirt. They looked at old photos, memories of birthdays, school events, and simple moments of joy. James smiled and said, "We've come a long way, son." Marcus nodded, feeling proud of their journey. Their story was a reminder that family isn't just about looks or background. It's about love, patience, and the effort to understand each other. James and Marcus had proven that even when the world didn't always understand, their family did. As Marcus prepared to start a new chapter in his life, college and beyond, James promised to keep supporting him every step of the way. They knew there would still be challenges, but together they could face anything. This is the end of their story for now, but the love between a white father and his black son will continue to grow. It is a story of hope, strength, and the power of family. If you enjoyed their journey, don't forget to subscribe and stay connected for more stories that touch the heart and inspire us all.